One of the reasons for shooting the East Coast locations, all of the exterior locations first, was to get the plates that were required for the immediate ILM sequences that we needed to get into the production line. But it also allowed us the opportunity to start the construction that was required for the sequences here in Los Angeles.
I had a whole art department back in Los Angeles starting to develop the sets that we would do on stage, while we had an art department on the East Coast developing all the locations that we had to shoot, so that on top of each other we could cram everything that normally, even under a tough schedule, might have been 6 months. It was all now 2 months.
You know, Stephen always has an interesting idea that you begin each major location. When we got to the East Coast, we began with the intersection sequence, which had a tremendous amount of crowd interaction and effects and whatnot. And when we got back to the West Coast, we began with the plane crash in the backyard of Marianne's house. There's a psychological impact that has in creating momentum for the movie and momentum for the cast. And I think that translates to the screen. I think Stephen feels very strongly that it does as well. So oftentimes we try to schedule things in that way. Sometimes it's not possible, but in this case it was. But that was a monumental set to put together, and we had to buy a 747, then we had to cut it up into pieces and have it strewn on the back lot, and then build the houses around it. It was quite an undertaking for about 2 or 3 days of photography.
The plane was cut up, dressed, and set dressing put a lot of the debris around, and the engines were smoking and on fire, which was quite an undertaking, and it took several months for the production group to facilitate that.
She's got this whole Scarlett O'Hara thing going on, you know what I mean? It's part of a contract. I have to carry her everywhere.
The airplane crash site set is a perfect example of a set that is all designed around a vision that Stephen had.
And as you walk behind the engine, we go this way and reveal everything.
He had an image of coming up the cellar stairs, coming out, and revealing the house virtually intact for a moment, until suddenly, as he's pulling back, you reveal part of an engine, and as Tom or Ray walks past, you reveal the bigger picture, which is the entire neighborhood is destroyed.
I find it interesting that the iconography of an image that you won't forget, that's seared into your brain forever, is something that I always lust for. I'm always looking to find images that I'll remember, that I think other people will remember too, and will represent to them the experience they had when they went to see this or that movie. And there was something about a 747 having belly crashed, but been gutted by fire and completely destroyed in a neighborhood, an upscale neighborhood, that I couldn't resist. And I said to David Kep, when we first began to sit down to talk about structuring War of the Worlds, I said, somewhere in the movie there's got to be a 747 that goes down right in a big neighborhood. And because it's just something you don't see. And when you do see it, it's usually on the news, and it's a tragic, tragic vision, and usually the cameras are held back, you know, from the carnage. And even though we don't have a lot of carnage in this movie, this is a PG-13 movie, but I think sometimes the less you show, the more you see. And in this case, with War of the Worlds, I wanted to show less in terms of a big image, but no bodies. There are not body parts all over the ground, but the audience may see things that aren't really there, because I really believe that showing less is really allowing you to experience more.
More homes start to move.
Of the movie, like all of his pictures, they're very unique. And what Stephen wanted to do is to have it feel visceral and real.
Push in. And go. Good. Print that one more time.
I've seen some sequences put together before the effects. I went down in the editing room and Steve invited me in and we were looking at the stuff, and it was dynamic. The accuracy in how he's cut these things together, that's just also a credit to his storytelling ability, that it works without the effects. The tension was there without the effects, which is not always the case, and it just shows that that story is working, that the characters are working, that the way that he is telling the story, it's involving.
Man, I think that's really good.
Harlan, Ogilvy. I got water. Food enough for weeks. You're welcome to stay, both of you.
Well, Ogilvy is a character a little bit like the Agnate in the original War of the Worlds H.G. Wells book. The main protagonist in the book winds up having to share a very small space with, and it's a very uncomfortable part of the novel. And I want it to be a very uncomfortable part of the film as well. And it's the only time our movie kind of stops and goes underground for a while.
Afternoon camera.
You come in first, Tim, like this. Me? Yeah, he pushes you back, and you both stuck against the gun. But then it's a struggle and a slow turn, where you get the upper hand, and you get now him back against the wall. Then it's just a matter of Tom will start sliding down, maybe you'll put your knee in his chest, he'll start sliding down until finally you get the gun. And when you get the gun away, you bring the gun up like this, not to hit him, just to take it. It's a natural move. You take it away and it goes up into the air, and then you hear the big ship going, ooh la. Everybody freezes and looks up, and that's when the aliens leave.
In the sequence in the basement, there's stuff that is incredibly tense, very tense. This is going to be scary. This is a scary movie. This is a scary, intense film.
Come in.
The character of Ogilvy is a man just like many people that you see in the movie that are dealing with this invasion, as a man who has lost everyone that he loves.
Did you lose anybody? All of them.
He's an ambulance driver in New York City. He comes home to discover that his family's gone. So he flees with the rest of the people, but somehow makes it past a lot of the obstacles that were placed before him and makes his way to this farmhouse, which isn't his, and takes shelter in this basement.
And he's been drinking too much peach schnapps, which he's found in the basement of this farmhouse. And that's where he's been hiding out. But he has a plan, and his plan is somewhat deranged, but you have to forgive him some of his derangement because he's suffered such a great loss, and he's not thinking clearly, and he's actually digging this tunnel that he's hoping somehow will connect with the New York subway system, which is sort of an impossible thing to even imagine based on where he is physically, but he's not thinking clearly, and he's got these very, very strange ideas.
At first you think he is someone that's helping them, and indeed he believes he is. Unfortunately, he's brought them into the basement that they will soon realize is right underneath the Martian encampment, with the theory that since they had hidden in the ground for millions of years and took us by surprise, that is the way that we can defeat them, is from underneath. And once Tom Cruise's character realizes that that's my master plan, he realizes he's in more danger with me than without me.
I hear you! Did you see it drinking? Did you see it drinking? You gotta be quiet!
What I liked about Ogilvy was he was another unreliable source of information. Since we didn't want any TVs or any radios or any information to come over a telephone or in any modern